connecting to the internet.
Internet.
Networking software.
World Wide Web thing on a computer today.
Computer.
NetSurfer Pro.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of NetSurfer Pro. I am, as always, your tour guide, Matt, and with me is my other tour guide,
Galen.
And we have some unfortunate news to share. We would like to give a sincere apology for a error we made on our previous episode that we should not have made.
Yes, we had a severe lapse in judgment as we made the episode. We neglected to mention the fact that hats were a major component of Team Fortress 2. Hats, specifically the trading of and the wearing of hats, are probably one of the big cornerstones into why TF2 was sort of an internet meme for a lot of the early 2010s, and we just didn't mention it.
Yeah, one of TF2's greatest exports went without us mentioning it, bringing it up, talking about it in any way, and for that we are sorry, and all we ask is that you are able to forgive us.
Yes, I do have a couple of complaints that have been sent our way. This one is from a Jeremy Plibbins. They ask, "Why do you hate hats so much?" And I think that Matt can speak for both of us here.
Right, I think I can speak for both of us, and I say that hats are very hard to wear if you have itchy scalp. Itchy scalp affects millions of Americans every day, makes it incredibly hard to put anything on your head, much less your own hair. And we apologize for also not mentioning itchy scalp in the last episode. Yes, we hope you understand.
I want to make it clear, I myself have scratched my scalp even a couple of times during this recording. And these are things that everybody has to struggle with.
Itchy scalp, much like yawning syndrome, is one of the few diseases that can be passed by audio.
Exactly.
And manual breathing syndrome. I can't keep it. Now I'm yawning and itching and manual breathing and sipping and ripping and dipping.
Well, hopefully your tongue is sitting comfortably in your mouth and you aren't feeling your clothes on your skin.
I was going to say the feeling the clothes one. That's a good one.
So yes, welcome back to NetSurfer Pro.
Oh, hopefully you also can't see your nose between your eyes. Yeah. So,
we bring up hats as TF2 not just for an excellent opening joke, which round of applause for ourselves, by the way. Just the execution on that one was flawless. But also because this episode actually continues on from Team Fortress 2.
Yes, this is our Team Fortress 2, if you will.
Our Team Fortress 2 episode 1, in a sense.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's TF2 episode 1. Yeah, so we didn't talk about everything we wanted to in the last episode, or in a way we also just had more we wanted to say after the fact, such as the whole hats thing, that we never really got around to, and so today we want to kind of just continue on that. TF2 is huge, which we tried to sort of really hammer in that point last time, and that includes sort of spawning many different subgenres and subcultures within it. And so a lot of this episode is going to be sort of exploring the different facets that TF2 led to, rather than just the game itself. And just really quick, I think we should just start with hats.
Yeah.
To explain that out of the way.
So, hats, to bring it back for a second. Hats were added to the game in, I want to say, 2009. I want to say it was after the Sniper and Spy update. where you could, I mean, as the name implies, you could change the headwear of your characters. And they, were initially just this sort of small thing that you could do to mix up your look if you wanted to, but the dollar signs in Gabe Newell's eyes started lighting up, and hats sort of ballooned into their own massive money-making thing within Team Fortress 2.
So a lot of the discussion in games in terms of like what they're doing that's evil per se is about loot boxes and about random purchases. Think of it like you buy something and you get something random. It doesn't necessarily have to be one thing or another. Hats you don't buy and then get them randomly. It's more like you're usually randomly granted them. Is that right? Or do they have a crate system?
They do have a crate system.
Oh, yeah. This is one of the early implementations of that then.
Yeah, like...
especially in a American title.
Yeah, like, so much of video game loot box culture can actually kind of be directly traced back to TF2 hats and crates. Because crates you could get very often is just a random drop, but to unlock the crates, you would need to buy a key for $2.49. And hats became their own economy.
Right. So one other thing about Steam is that Steam has a secondary marketplace. And players can sell and buy in-game items through this. This is huge because, I mean, for one thing, it means players have this, like, booster pack trading card-esque element of, like, ooh, I could get something worth money. But also, at the same time, you can circumvent the randomness. If you really want to get something, you don't have to push for it. But also, transactions made on the Steam Marketplace, Valve still gets a cut out of. So, like, Valve had the randomness of, getting the hat you want from the crates, and then, also, if you don't like the hat, or if you want somebody else's hat without being random, they still get money through that purchase. So that whole ecosystem, while being a little better for players than pure randomness, was still, like, feeding into Valve.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that the crates in your inventory just take up space. And so it's sort of this, like, psychological push to be like, okay, I want to get rid of these crates. I need to open them.
Yeah, and, like, that push is even less psychological when you are a free-to-play player, because a free-to-play player has, like, 50 inventory slots. And, like, it should be noted that as a free-to-play player, the only thing you need to do to be a quote-unquote not free-to-play player is buy exactly one thing from the market. And so, like, I don't want it to sound like, this is an evil system, at least as far as that is specifically concerned. Like, being free-to-play is basically a trial run, and TF2 is definitely a scenario where I would say, like, being a free-to-play player is not any demarcation of any kind of moral failing. This isn't, this isn't a gacha game that, like, massively bottlenecks your progress if you are completely free to play.
Right. It should also be mentioned that, kind of going back to our last episode, a lot of weapons in the game are side grades, so even that random aspect is still, like, not necessarily bottlenecking free-to-play progress.
Yeah.
With the idea that, like, you can get weapons over time, but it is faster to buy them directly off the market or, like, buy the crafting materials.
Yeah.
Hats themselves are mainly just cosmetic. I think there's one or two that have taunts that are gameplay affecting, but, like, not in a substantial way. But, yeah, hats are purely cosmetic. They don't really do anything to help you win. They're just sort of expression. They're funny.
Yeah. The reason that hats are a big deal with TF2 is I think it has the same joke curve as, like, Among Us did, as the like Among Us curve that we talked about in, was that last episode that I introduced that segment?
I think it was the Auntie Donna episode.
Right.
Auntie Donna.
Auntie Donna. But it had that Among Us curve where like it started out as we have cosmetics in the game. Then it was we have added a whole bunch of cosmetics, and the community kind of lampooned the fact that like, you know, this game that has a really good consistent art style is now kind of like muddying it, and it's sort of you know, a little bit cash grabby. But then it came back around to the TF2 being self-aware enough to be like, haha, we're the silly hat game. And it wasn't in a way that was like, ew, gross, the company is doing it, now it's the company's doing it, now the joke is dead. It just sort of like it mellowed it out, because
this was in an age before hyper corporate memes.
Yes.
Where like Twitter accounts would be posting memes for like McDonald's and Arby's and stuff. So when a company actually did participate in the meme, it felt more like they were respecting the players in the community and not just like trying to take that and make money off it.
Yeah. I mean, even on top of that as well, it was Valve at a time where like I have bad words for Valve, but also like Valve is probably one of the better developers, and they were and still are heavily respected and heavily loved by fans. Problems with them aside, most of them relating to things like Valve time. So like it was before the whole company getting in on the joke was overplayed. It was a very respected company, and as we have said, the cosmetic upgrades have basically no gameplay benefits. It is entirely just if you want to customize your look, you can get into it. If you don't care, you can you'll have maybe a couple of things you can throw on characters, but like nothing that will make or break anything, and you don't really have to care too much about it.
Right. I do want to also mention that, so for a lot of games with cosmetics like this, especially hero games, so for hero games, you have to worry about the clarity of whatever subject it is that has the cosmetics. So a lot of games will have like a notable weapon or a notable feature or body type, which TF2 definitely has notable body types. But also, hats only cover the head, which means that like the entire body part, which has all of their like weapons equipped, their like class specific flair, the color of what team they are, all that is unaffected. So like it really doesn't mess with the clarity of the game. And even then, it's very small, so like it's kind of easy to ignore what hats people have.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to a video by the creator Folding Ideas about the game Fortnite and how that kind of weaponizes monetization.
Oh yeah, manufactured discontent.
Yeah, and the difference between something like that and TF2 is that in Fortnite you're buying like an entire outfit, and so people are constantly able to see what you're wearing from head to toe. TF2, it's just the top of your head, and all the relevant information is below your head. And so, yeah, it's easy to be like, you know, kind of keep those out of the field of vision, if you will, not in focus.
Now, I will say, there are also specifically mists that do change the body area, but they are also, every mist that changes things like shirt and stuff like that are always specifically made to be readable at a moment's glance and not obstruct anything. And like mists are made, a lot of them specifically deal with the, you know, the chest area, the meat of the character, but they are always created with a design philosophy to make it so that it's exactly as readable as if they were default. And like, also, actually, I think a good thing to mention is that a lot of the designs are actually community created and like put in from the community. There's an entire Steam Workshop page that is just people from the community designing things for the different characters that might get put in. And
Right.
there's an aspect of I believe that there's an aspect of like if you buy a misc that Johnny J Steam player made, they get a cut of the revenue that you paid for that misc.
Right. I know Valve also does this for Dota 2 in that game's cosmetics.
Yeah. So like that's kind of another thing as to why like Valve sort of got away with this.
They have goodwill.
I when I say get away with that, I don't mean to poo-poo on Valve. Like there are problems with the system, like how kitting out one character with the miscs you want and the hats you want could easily cost like $50. But like the systems and the philosophies that they have in place are designed so that you are kind of helping somebody from the community first, maybe a little bit second, maybe they're they're thinking a little bit first of how can we use this to make money. But in an industry where that's like the number one priority and number two priority is blank, it is still refreshing that a company like Valve, which could just, they could be massively worse. They could make massively more money if they didn't have that community mindset. The fact that they still do want to like have that philosophy of helping people within the community and supporting people within the community through selling these things is still very commendable.
Well, let's not forget that Valve makes most of their money from Steam.
Yeah.
I do want to say that part of the reason why hats were such a meme, not only was it like the fervor of people that were into hats, but the fact that like TF2 didn't and doesn't really get many gameplay updates. And so a lot of the actual content updates were just extra hats and miscs. And so like it felt more like the game was about hats because most of the new things were cosmetics.
Yeah, there was a very long dry spell that arguably is still a little bit going on of not really adding too much to the game except for more cosmetics to throw your money at.
Yeah.
Which in recent times has changed. There was the big Blue Moon update. There's the I think the heavy was it the heavy update or the pyro update? One of them. There have been a lot more directly gameplay focused updates that have been coming out a lot more for TF2, and it's good that the game is still getting support, but like for historical sake, it must be remembered that TF2 was and in some ways still kind of is the like dirty laundry that Valve doesn't really want to take care of anymore, but kind of just has Ricochet. To. Well, listen, people still talk about TF2 these days.
Sure.
Those are my closing thoughts on hats, if you have any more.
Nope. Let's get into the next topic. Talk about some art.
Yes.
Talked enough about the ethics of selling and making money off of video games to a large audience, games that are constantly supported and thus need to constantly pay developers to make new content. Now we can talk about Gary Newman.
Yes!
The other Valve figurehead with the initials GN.
G-New.
Really, Gary Newman isn't the focus of what we're talking about, though. Gary Newman is the catalyst. The spark that lit the fire. The spark that lit the fuse that then exploded the dynamite that created a cave-in that unveiled the ancient statue that put a curse up. You know what I mean. It's like a Rube Goldberg here of Gary's mod.
But first, we need to talk about the Source Engine.
Yes.
The Source Engine is the engine that... Hi, cat.
Oh.
My cat is extremely needy and wants food, but I'm not going to give it to her. She is fat.
She really wants to learn about in-depth physics simulations.
Indeed. The Source Engine, I believe I believe it specifically debuted with Half-Life 2. And it's a physics engine. All games have physics engines. Most games have physics engines. But the Source Engine is specifically notable because it is a lot easier to get into than other engines.
Well, yeah, so Source Engine itself was notable for its more rigorous physics than previous game engines. Like, I think the way it was unveiled was with just like physics simulations of a bunch of barrels rolling around.
Yeah.
It was a huge deal because like Half-Life 2 had all these physics related puzzles involved with like putting things on an object to weigh it down or rolling barrels. And
Yeah, if you go back to Half-Life 2 and wonder why there's so many puzzles that are like take a barrel, put it underneath a thing in water and make a ramp lift up to get to progress, it's because that was really fucking mind-blowing in 2007.
Yeah, these all used to be things that were hard coded into games. You know, in Wet Dry World, the platform was only raised because there was a script that called them to raise.
Yeah.
So the Source Engine is an engine that Valve used for a very long time, at least a decade, until Source 2, which was more recently. They used it for Counter-Strike, Half-Life 2, and all that games like followups, Portal 2, and of course TF2. And yeah, Source notably has pretty in-depth modding tools, and the Source development kit, which again TF2 was made as Team Fortress Classic was made as a promotion for, is like very, very approachable. And what that leads to is people being able to kind of make whatever for Source very easily. And this led to Gary Newman creating Gary's Mod, or more familiarly known Gmod. Gmod is a sandbox program, sort of a game, but not necessarily. It's more about just messing around with the Source Engine itself. It allows you to import models, objects, and maps from other Source games, and then people have made a ton of custom maps and objects and models and weapons and stuff for the game itself, or for Gmod itself. But it allowed you to bring in like characters from anything Source related.
The closest example I can think of off the top of my head as something like I would directly compare it to in a modern sense is Dreams. Right. I don't know a whole lot about Dreams, but it's that sense of like you can mess around with the sandbox of items, but you can also use those sandbox of items and use some very, user-friendly programming in a sense to create your own other games with it if you want.
There's like you can set different settings for models and connect them together. You can import models and that you've already programmed in certain ways, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And among these tools is the ability to pose and animate a model very slightly. Notably, you can pose them in various spaces, but also kind of change their facial expressions. And since you could do this with source models from other games, people started making videos with this.
And now we get into the fun part, the meat and potatoes.
So, Gmod videos are kind of a mix of brief animation and stop motion, using, capturing Gmod itself to animate sort of little videos, with the characters moving around, doing things as you would in an animated video. I don't know. But it was kind of limited because you couldn't do really complex sequences of animations. So a lot of times it was like either quick cuts or fixed camera angles that allowed the user to like mask the stop motion. And also Gmod was really good for making exaggerated changes in poses, but not like subtle movements. And so like characters often flailed their limbs around, or characters' facial expressions would be very wild, oftentimes like clipping into their own head, just because like that was a lot easier to do and kind of match the zaniness that a lot of characters were going, or a lot of creators were going for.
Yeah. Uh, Gmod is Gmod is a really interesting tool because it's the sort of thing that you kind of have to fight against to make something good. Um, so like a lot of early Gmod videos are kind of eh.
Yeah.
And I say that with all the love in my heart because before like there were more tools and before there was, before humor really progressed, it was really easy to make a big wacky face. It was really easy to attach a like rocket to limbs and then just sort of like lock, torso, make limbs flail, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole joke. It was really easy to like one of the sort of semi-common jokes I would see is like intentionally walking in as your like obvious player model, because like NPCs have the sort of Half-Life 2, standing and just walking like normal people animation, but player characters are very obviously in the like action pose with crowbar up. So it was easy to have those two exact states. It's like either you are just a normal NPC, you are obviously a player, or you are a ragdoll that is very vaguely being used.
Right. I
but
think. Oh, I was just gonna say a good example of what we mean by this early state is the vicious cycle of Two Fort.
Yes,
A pretty well-known early Gmod video that has really quick cuts, but the characters don't really move a whole lot. When they do, it's either, like you said, the like obvious player model in third person, or it's like a character sliding along the ground.
Yeah. Vicious Cycle of 2-4 kind of spawned its own. I guess you would. Yeah, I guess it would be considered like a meme where people would make the Vicious Cycle of X, usually another map in Team Fortress, sometimes other games entirely. But it was all that wacky style where like it starts out with a character running up and looking at something else, and then it like starts the music track and they look at each other and it's just sort of like this barrage of chaos where it's like the sniper shoots the soldier, but then the spy pushes the sniper off or whatever, and a demo man explodes the spy, and all on down the food chain until you get back to the first person respawning and starting the cycle over again. A lot of I would also point you to Das Bullshit, a creator who created the Gmod Idiot Box, which was basically kind of like a clip show of just various like Gmod ideas, which was a lot of the earlier episodes are very not all that great. It's very like early internet humor that's just sort of be loud and be random. But the development of the series is what I kind of appreciate. One of my favorite jokes is a joke that doesn't even really use like all of the big wackiness. I believe it's the Gmod Idiot 6, where a character I'm going to spoil this joke, but this is honestly a scenario where I would say like you don't really have to watch the thing. You don't really have to watch a lot of early Gmod things. But the joke is that a character is running from another character, and so the pursued gets into the car, and then they turn the knob, and it's like it turns over, and the engine turns over, and then they get punched out of the car by the pursuer. And so they run up to a doorbell, or they run up to their door, and they turn the knob, and it turns over like a car, and it turns over like a car, and then they get kicked through the door, and their ragdoll flies out. And then they run to the phone and pick it up, and they put their hand over the phone, and they turn over, and it turns over like a car, and it turns over like a car. It's the perfect like blend of that early style, but with like a really good solid joke behind it. Because
Yeah.
like at the end of the turning over bits, they get punched out and their ragdoll is allowed to fly and be funny. But like the setup for the ragdoll getting punched is an extremely funny like recurring joke.
Yeah. So a lot of Gmod videos obviously use TF2. I think part of that's because the TF2 shorts were, so big as we talked about, and I think that already gave people sort of inspiration, like, oh, these characters were already used in videos. I can do something like that. But also the characters themselves were very cartoony, which lent well to the exaggerated style of Gmod. Oftentimes when like Half-Life characters were in Gmod, they didn't base them at all off the characters in the game. They would be just like stand-ins for some other character.
Yeah,
But
probably the best example being the G-Man, who's, in Half-Life this stoic whatever, but he just kind of has the most funny posable face. He has really exaggerated features when you pose his face, and so he was kind of a standard like funny ragdoll to have a big funny eyebrow or whatever.
Or like whoever, I don't remember the character's name, but whoever Alex's dad was often just stand-in for old guy.
Yeah.
But TF2, the characters' personalities were so like well known and beloved, and since like people knew that these could work in a cartoon, people often implemented the characters' personalities in some way. Or like personalities that represented people who play the character. So, like the mischievous spy who hates everyone, or the engineer who just enjoys camping.
Yeah.
Also, so a lot of these Gmod videos either used 3 different types of audio, either no dialogue, dialogue from another source that was like lip synced, or sentence mixing. And sentence mixing was particularly popular with TF2 because, again, there's so many voice lines. There's so many clips where you can hear people saying things that you can kind of find every given sound your mouth can make, every given mouth sound in TF2. And so people can make kind of whatever sentences they want, especially using words that people already recognize. This is also where a lot of memes like putis came from, is the sort of Gmod community.
Yeah. The TF2 characters especially are also useful because like you can mix an entire sentence, but like even if you don't want to put in the effort to mix an entire sentence, it's very easy to like find a certain voice line that just conveys what you want. Like the scout has a voice line where he says what and then continues, but like the short what comes up every once in a while as kind of like a very deadpan, or like the kind of thing that comes up as a reaction that's very small for something that is very large, or like
bewilderment almost.
Yeah. Or like Heavy just has a lot of very good, very funny screams that just are very good like filler material.
Right. I don't have much else to say about Gmod videos in particular, other than a great example of sentence mixing is Heavy as Telephone. That one always stuck out with me because it's really well sentence mixed as far as like incorporating sounds in a way that doesn't sound too choppy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have more than a few things I can say. Let's see. Dad Intelligence is probably my favorite example of like old Gmod, where it's a mix of stop motion and sometimes live gameplay, but it's done very well. The jokes are a little bit slower than it might be nowadays, as in like nowadays I feel like comedy has to kind of be like beat beat beat, whereas in the slower days you could have like beat and then it kind of like lingers on that beat for a little bit too long, and you wouldn't necessarily put that you wouldn't actively be thinking about something like that.
Back in my day, we'd have to wait 2 minutes for the video to render all the way, and then we'd have to wait 30 minutes for the punchline. And we were laughing the whole time.
Oh, man. I'm so glad we lived in this era and not like the era where you had to start a download before you went to sleep to watch Hey Yay Yay Yay.
I'm glad we live in an era that's post-Zoetrope.
God, right? So yeah, Dat Intelligence is a personal favorite. Another example is a much more modern example of somebody who still uses Gmod is oh my god.
Well, you linked me some videos by Antoine Delac.
That's it.
It's like Dalek, but with the A and the E switched.
Yeah, I always call him Antoine Dalek, and it's just not that. It's the exact opposite. But Antoine Delac still uses Gmod most prevalently, I believe. And the videos that are basically classics, modern classics of TF2 Gmod are Heavy is Dead and Demo Mesa. Demo Mesa is very good, but Heavy is Dead is like basically the modern classic of TF2 Gmod animation. And where it's just the whole setup is Heavy goes out and is like, it's a good day to be not dead, and then he's dead. And it uses the stop motion very effectively because like it isn't just used as get from point A to point B. It is used like actual animation, where a character is very obviously exaggeratedly throwing something, or a character is very directly acting out with their body. But it also splices that with the little live action segments, like live gameplay that it uses specifically for comedic punch, where like the soldier is the first time he shows up, he is literally animated by just like waving him around in Gary's mod, whereas the spy is stop motion animated. But like it cuts between those two styles extremely rapidly, to where when somebody does a funny ragdoll, they might then be the next scene they're in stop motion, and it starts from their position as a funny ragdoll.
Right. It's it uses the like very obvious ragdoll stuff not just as a medium, but as like a format to make jokes. Like, yeah, it's very tasteful with how often it uses it. It also has great camera work with like having a lot of sight gags that are out of screen for a little bit and then come into view. It has just like a lot of good posing and character acting as far as like making characters' poses expressive. Even the thumbnail itself has the spy in this really good like detective pose.
Yeah.
It also is very not multimedia, but it has a lot of things from other games like Crash Bandicoot and Phoenix Wright that make it feel really like, I don't know, sampley, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not just TF2. Demo Mesa is better if you're familiar with the opening of Half-Life 1. Because that's basically what it is.
Yeah. I could talk about this all day. Another series that is semi ongoing is Gorgeous Freeman, which is also Antoine Dalek. I'm just going to call him Antoine Dalek. His last name is Dalek. Gorgeous Freeman. It's basically a retelling of Half-Life 2 through funny stop motion. It's also extremely well made, and incredibly funny. But one thing I want to specifically point out is the serious portion of the video, the actually serious portion of this podcast, not of the video itself. One of the characters is the lady from Half-Life 2. She has a turtleneck sweater. I don't know. I never played Half-Life 2. I don't remember her name. But she specifically is like rolls around in a chair and she types with a keyboard, which is a reference directly to Kitty 0706. Kitty 0706, I don't remember his real name, but he was a Gmod creator as well, a Gmod animator. Really, I would say kind of like formative in like that early period. And he, unfortunately, died in like the mid 2010s from some kind of cancer. I genuinely don't remember. Yeah. The one of the biggest projects that he made was the Team Fabulous 2, which semi-recently had a reanimated collaboration that was specifically dedicated to him. Kitty 0706 is was like really, again, I think kind of like that, a little bit of a pioneer in that early Gmod style. I think his stuff is worth watching and worth remembering. I do think this does come with an asterisk of this. You have to understand that it was like 2010s YouTube. Literally one of the videos is half R word 2, which I don't think even was a Gmod video, but like I don't usually fuck with like you have to remember it was a different time as an explanation for, you know, a lot of different creators. But in this specific instance, I think it is valid to say you have to remember that this was a very different time in YouTube. And so when you go back to those videos, there will probably be no small amount of like homophobia, and that's the punchline. Things like that. But it has to be taken in the context.
We're not saying to watch them because they're funny.
Yeah. Like, you don't need to watch them, but there are a lot of nuggets of like wonderful little bits and wonderful little jokes that sort of like show how Gmod once again was like developed from just haha funny ragdoll go burr into like using the funny eccentricities of Gmod to tell jokes themselves. So yeah, that's the serious portion over.
Okay, let's we need to speed this up. We need to keep going to the next few topics.
Oh god, yeah.
So I guess the easiest way to put this next one will be it's so Source Filmmaker was the program made that Valve used to make the TF2 shorts, and I don't know exactly when. I forgot to look this up, but they eventually released it to the public. People could download it and use it to make their own films using the Source engine. And since this is sort of a more professional grade program made for animation directly, it allows for more dynamic camera angles, more minute and like more deliberate animation. You know, you didn't have to worry about the huge exaggerations from Gmod.
When you animated a character, you directly animated their 3D, their like 3D mesh. You did not have to like basically play a video game posing them.
Right. And so SFM, Source Filmmaker, allowed creators to make, I mean, more, like I said, more direct, like movies, if you will. It definitely has a different style from Gmod. And I think part of why Gmod still survives is because of its unique style and like, you know, the medium itself versus Source Filmmaker being sort of its own standalone medium.
Yeah. Yeah, like Source Filmmaker is directly animation, whereas like some of the jokes in Gmod are kind of dependent on the fact that Gmod itself is basically a video game. So like you won't find anything like a joke of, you know, an obvious player character being in scene in a Source Filmmaker video. You will just see like an animation like you would see if in any other animation software. But the community around Source Filmmaker is somewhat large, probably larger than the Gmod community nowadays, because it is well, I want to say it's a good software. It really isn't. It has a lot of jank on its own, but like, if you want to make a genuine Team Fortress 2 short, there is no other software to make it with.
Right. It's a lot more versatile in some ways, especially ways that allow you to make internet movies. I don't have much else to say about SFM.
I could, again, this is a thing I could sit here and just bring up like one video and talk all day about it, but I won't, as much as I want to. Let's see. Crocodile made the wonderful team. You might know him from the team service announcement series, where it's basically like a bunch of shorts that are like specific little like lessons for Team Fortress 2 about things like, you know, when to pop Uber, or like, you know, how to fight against a certain class as one class, usually directly comedic and then with like some kind of serious explanation below. But Crocodile has also done a lot of other Source Filmmaker shorts. Italian Ninja 98 is you might recognize her as the animator of the audio of like, what the hell are you doing, you crazy bitch? Please give me huggies. Ooh woo, pounces on you. She has also done a lot of very good very good Source Filmmaker animations that are just quite enjoyable on their own. Ethios Mod, I think, is a Source Filmmaker. I think they used to be Gmod and then switched over to Source Filmmaker. Lazy Purple incorporates a lot of Source Filmmaker shorts into his videos, talking about the various classes in Team Fortress 2. Just Source Filmmaker is hard to talk about specifically as like the cultural significance, just because like it's like saying it's like talking about Flash, not the Flash animated shorts, but like Flash as a program,
Right.
you know, or like talking about.
It's like trying to talk about Game Maker versus talking about RPG Maker. Like,
Yeah.
There's definitely some elements of a shared style, but it's more notable because it doesn't restrict you so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there wasn't as much of a, like, converged style as there was for Gmod.
Yeah. We could sit here and talk about stylistic differences, but like the end result of Source Filmmaker is that it is a program for animation that has had a lot of very good animation made with it.
Yes. Okay.
So moving on.
Yes, this is something coming up that I know a lot about. This is YTPMV, a topic we'll probably have to cover on its own episode later. I'm mainly focusing on TF2 YTPMV. So YTPMV stands for YouTube Poop Music Video. It spawned from YouTube Poop, but it's not necessarily related to that. It has more in common with like mashup culture and sample-based music, even to the point that like there are a lot of YTPMV creators on like the Siva Gunner team. YTPMVs involve sampling different sources, like visual and audio sources, usually from things that aren't instruments, and pitch shifting them up and down to create like music out of those sources or those samples. Oftentimes, instruments from an original song will be replaced by samples of things like characters talking, sound effects, stuff like that. And then also there's almost always a visual part that either accentuates the music or helps display what sample covers which part. So like a character saying a word might be used as the bass line, and then whenever the bass line goes up or down a note, the video of that character saying something will get like mirrored. And so every time the bass would play a note per se, the image of that character saying something gets flipped.
Yeah. So like
a good example that's not necessarily TF2 related is I even found the perfect song for it by McMangos. The original song is Rock My Emotions, which is a like a chiptune song. And in that video it does a good job of showing like what each part is covering. So like the very start, you can hear like a sample of like a YouTube video of some kid making a joke, and it's going like do 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 do, and every single one of those do's, the image of the kid flips horizontally to like show that's the line it's doing. And then as it adds other parts, those parts also appear and start like flipping whenever they change the noise.
Yeah.
And so TF2 having a huge array of sound samples was prime material for this type of thing. So there's dialogue from like the shorts. There is dialogue from the game itself. And then also there is a lot of percussion available from different like, hit sounds and firing sounds. It's a game with guns. Guns are percussion in this case. Also, of course, TF2's meme community is big, which means that there's still crossover with like meme communities. One of the classic TF2 YTPMVs is Gentlementlemen, which we briefly mentioned during our previous episode. It's a great example of how sentence mixing was incorporated, because it's based off a line from Meet the Spy where he goes, "Gentlemen," but it just extends it a little bit, so he says "Gentlementlemen" along with the music. But then also people would incorporate other sort of things with it, like Philip on Bread incorporated more direct sentence mixing and I think a little bit of Gmod in the first series of videos, which are October 1st, September 1st, and June 1st. These all were YTPMVs of Toho songs related to those months using medic samples. For more complicated visuals, there's stuff like Red Racer by DWL. But then you get into things that actually use like Gmod and SFM for the visuals. One of the most notable ones being Bonku Miru by Mautendu, which was a cover of the song Chiru Mibaru. So there's also like original songs that were created using samples, such as Spies Like You by DWL 1993, who also just made a lot of TF2 YTPMVs. And then, so this all culminated with the TF2 anniversary collab, which was a collaboration made for the 10th anniversary of Team Fortress 2, and released in that year. The collaboration was a medley of a bunch of different songs, clocking in at around 10 minutes, and the collaboration involved each part of the medley, which was like an individual part of a song, being given to a pair of audio creator and visual creator. And this actually incorporated a lot of Gmod and SFM creators into the project. For a lot of these collabs, it's less about showing what each part is in the audio and more about providing just sort of a visual experience to match it. So like part of the medley is Chocobo Racing from Chocobo Racing, just the sort of theme. And instead of it being like a showing each part with like the instruments and whatnot, it's just like the two teams riding on their carts going forward as if it were a race.
Yeah, like a lot of the base YTPMVs will. I feel like a lot of the base YTPMVs are a really good outlet of like having a whole bunch of various small hobbies or interests and wanting to just sort of cram them all together. So like, you use the Scout's woo, you use, a gunshot from Kitchen Gun as percussion, you use
Jack Black saying stop.
Yeah, you use Octagon. Jack Black's Octagon video from Sesame Street as, you know, a bass line or something. And it's just sort of like, you know, taking little bits and pieces of culture and putting it into, you know, into one video for music. And it's this fun way of like, this fun way of just sort of encapsulating a bunch of different memes and a bunch of small hobbies you might have into one little song. But then when you get into the collaboration, it kind of depends on you. It assumes that you sort of know a lot of the specific sources, and so like they'll have a lot more fun with the visuals by, you know, showing more than just images flipping, but like maybe actually like specifically referencing things, like how you know, Mountain Dew's Bonkamiru is specifically like you basically recreating the song music video that you definitely named, that I definitely know the name of.
Chirumiru.
Yes, that
one. Yeah, it's more of like a direct recreation, and then it's even more of a direct recreation in the collab version.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of the songs used in the collaboration are like, they were originally a separate YTPMV, and they had people compose a melody involving them, kind of stringing them together in one continuous song. And the description of the collaboration video has a playlist that includes links to all of the videos used as like the original source. And so if you're going to look at these, I highly recommend looking at that playlist and then the collaboration, because the playlist itself has like pretty much all of the classic videos, all of like the hits. And then the collaboration itself, you can kind of appreciate it once you've gotten that out of the way and like really see like all the hard work. People that do these collabs, they pretty much put like their best work in these, because these are meant to be like celebrations, tributes, you know. This was the 10th anniversary of TF2, so it was supposed to be big and special. And so like it has some really incredible work in both the audio department and the visual department. That's just really like marvelous to see. Yeah. That's all I want to talk about for YTPMV for now, really. Especially though, just like as a capstone to the other animation stuff. Yeah,
I don't have a whole lot to add with YTPMVs, because I do quite like YTPMVs, but like they're so insane.
They're really different.
I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to really explain them in a way that sounds interesting or appealing. I think they're this really weird mix of like stomp and like sample heavy media, and then also just like internet video editing prowess in a way that's both like catchy and very crafty.
Yeah.
Very skillful. Craftful. Skillcraft.
Crafting words.
This episode sponsored by Skillcraft. I was going to talk about one other topic, but I think this is running late, and I'd rather do a separate episode on this last topic. So I don't really have anything else to say.
Yeah. I guess that's probably a good point to sort of wrap up. Team Fortress 2 the game, and Team Fortress 2 the meme are somewhat separate entities. They sort of inherently have to diverge a little bit, where like the TF team can certainly reference, you know, no small amount of the memes, but like they can't just, you know, make the heavy's actual personality like Hoovy or Putis, or they can't make the soldier actually say penis.
Yeah. Make soldiers say penis. Starting a petition.
But like the meme community surrounding it just sort of picks it up and runs with it anyway, and it's such a wonderful little microcosm of just all of meme culture, because like all of meme culture is very hard to track, but Team Fortress 2 has been around for 14 years. So like you can see the trends kind of, you know, going going one way or going another way, where a lot of early trends are just sort of saying funny words, haha, penis, haha, putis. But like, you get more specific and constructed jokes. So, Heavy is Dead is its own sort of joke because it's a reference to this really, really funny short. Seriously, watch Heavy is Dead. That's your only homer from this episode.
Nope. Also watch the TF2 collab.
Okay,
you
yes,
get to
actually,
assign one homework. I get to assign one homework. It's only
you
fair.
know what? That is fair. We are both teachers.
Yes, and we have taught you a lesson on the history and the culture of TF2. I hope that was a lesson, and I hope it wasn't just us rambling. But they're kind of the same thing when you get down to it.
Anyway, our next lesson is going to be Who Am I? With Renee Descartes.
I think, therefore, I have a Twitter account you can follow. We have a Twitter account for our podcast at NetSurferPro on Facebook and Twitter. You can find links to our new episodes there, and you can find teasers for our upcoming episodes there. Try to play a little trivia game. Try to see if you can figure out what our next topic's actually going to be whenever the teaser gets added. You can follow us on any podcasting platform you like. Give us a rating, give us a comment, give us reviews, give us sweet search engine optimization as you interact with us on different platforms. Really would help a lot. Also, let us know if there's any feedback or anything you want us to cover, anything you'd be interested in. I'm sure we'd love to hear any suggestions and what you've thought of the episodes and whatnot. For me, you can follow me on Twitter at MattCraigGaming. I tweet out links to stuff I work on, as well as just tweet about other things. Some of the stuff I work on includes my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/twack. That's twitch.tv/TWAK, where I stream on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from about 1 p.m. Central Time to 3 or 4 p.m. Central Time. I play a lot of roguelites, a lot of competitive games. Been playing some Teamfight Tactics, some Risk of Rain 2, whatnot. It's always a blast, always pretty analytical, fun, exciting, what have you, chill, upbeat, good vibes, picking up. You can also follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/IEatSonic, where I mainly post videos on just kind of whatever is interesting to me. Recently, I've been uploading VODs from a tournament for a video game that I hosted the stream for. So, check that out if you want to see some cool tournament VODs, or check out my other videos where I've done things like analyze various puzzle games. And I think that does it for me. Oh, other than you can follow my other podcast, Board Game Bros, on Facebook and Twitter at BGBrosCast, where I talk about board games.
Mm-hmm. You can find me on Twitter at Galen Wilson, GalenWils0N. I have a lot of hot takes and whatnot. You can find me on YouTube at The Only Galen on YouTube, where I am heavily considering making a video over why NFTs are bullshit. You can find me on Twitch at Machine Gun Vampire, where every-ish Saturday we are hoping to continue a Dungeons & Dragons 5e game that stars this podcast's very own Matt, as well as another online friend of mine, Seamus. And I believe that's all my socials as well. So, therefore I am.
And therefore I conquered. See ya.
Bye!